Welcome to another edition, a very special edition of Vigorously with me, Val Kleinhans. Content creator Robert Walton of the Metal Meltdown is here. I love watching your videos. Thrilled to have you. The man is shocked. He's
I
amused.
am.
I know.
I'm a gas.
Oh,
I said this before you started recording, but it's genuinely rare and shocking for someone to be this excited to speak to me.
I'm thrilled because I've been watching your videos for a minute and we have a lot of the same thoughts, so we'll definitely dive into that. But how are you? How are things? What's going on?
I'm doing good, feeling good, doing great. Not much going on, just pumping out the standard end of the year content that is
Yeah.
expected of a channel like mine.
Hmm.
Best albums, worst albums, all kinds of other fun stuff, and preparing for the holiday season and just drinking lots of alcohol and water occasionally and enjoying
Only
life,
occasionally.
you know?
Right. Only occasionally with the water.
Just
More,
occasionally.
more.
Anyone who knows the Metal Meltdown also knows that I drink like a fiend, so water is it's an abnormal thing to see.
It's all right. We love that vibe. What is, for those who are just getting to know you though, and are meeting you for the first time on my podcast anyway, what is your metal origin story? How did you fall in love with the genre too?
I kind of got into a lot of metal through my dad. It's
Mm,
a very like generic story. Like my dad introduces me to like a lot of classic rock and punk, like The Clash, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin. And even though I was born in the mid 90s, but
mm.
despite that, I got into metal because I already knew about a lot of rock and punk through the 70s stuff. My attitude was like, I want to know what comes next. So from there, I got into Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and I kind of went through metal chronologically, if that makes sense. Um, and as time has gone on, it's really just been, wanting to explore as much as possible. Like for a long time, I wasn't really into black metal until certain albums clicked, like
Hmm.
Sunbather from Death Heaven comes to mind, stuff from Watain and Behemoth as well. A lot of metalcore went right over my head for a while. I went into like a metal elitist phase where I'm like, if it's not 80s thrash and death
Yeah,
metal, I don't care.
we've all been there.
Um, and yeah, just I don't know, just growing up in general and living in a pretty diverse city as well, being exposed to so many different things and being a chef and working in a diverse field outside of the Metal Meltdown, it just made me want to listen to more and more music and try more and more things. And the goal of the Metal Meltdown is kind of just to kind of create a space for people who also just want to explore music. It's not about this is the best riff, 10 out of 10. This is metal and this isn't. And if you disagree, you're a gay poser. Like
Oh
I
God.
don't want to do that shit. I hate that that's even still a thing that's happening in 2024. The
Yeah.
goal is like if your basic knowledge of metal is like a couple songs from AC/DC, that's fine. If you just want to talk about cool music, then come talk to me.
Yeah, that is the way that you get introduced to other things. Thing leads to another. I had my introduction to metal was kind of sort of a divorced dad moment. It was hilarious because my dad found one of my Aerosmith CDs and it was laying in his Dodge Dakota and he was like, "Put that shit in. Where has this been?" I was like, "Wait a second, where have you been?" And it was only like after the my point is like it was only
Like,
after
why
the
are you asking me?
divorce.
It's your CD, bro.
It was mine, but it was mine, and he didn't know, and he just like saw it laying because this is we're close in age, so we remember the Walkman era, right? So we
hmm
still had the actual CDs, and it was laying in his car, and he was like, "Put that in." And this was after they got divorced, and I was like, "Where has rock and roll dad been? Where has that been?"
He's sitting there crying to walk this way.
He
Like,
is. I
yeah,
was
this reminds me of the good old days.
I was like, wait a minute, where has this been? And then he was like, yeah, by the way, there's also Leonard Skinner. There's also Metallica. There's also, and then I was like, well, now you tell me. Thanks. Thanks, Dad. But it it just leads from one thing to
He gets
another.
divorced and he's like, suddenly I love rock music. That's
Where
so
did
crazy.
it was like he was a closeted fan all this time and I had no idea. And I was like, where is this coming from? But the point is like one thing leading to another, that happens. And we need that environment to explore because
hmm
that's truly how we get introduced to anything. What is your social media origin story?
Uh, I had kind of always been on like Tumblr blogs and doing YouTube shit because I always, from as a teenager, always liked the idea of like being YouTube famous, especially like early 2010s. I'm still kind of in high school
Hmm.
and, Game Grumps, Markiplier, PewDiePie. I was more of a really playing a lot of video games, of course, as a young teenage boy. What teenage boy wasn't playing video games? So I always just like the idea of just being internet famous. So always trying to pump stuff out there and just trying to get a little clout, get a little moment in the spotlight. And then as time went on, and as I kind of grew up, and as I'm kind of coming more and more out of this metal elitist phase, I'm just like, I'm not really happy with this. I'm not happy with this content. I'm not happy with where I am in life, and I need to change. And the content just kind of naturally changed with me as well. Like as I lost weight and became more mature, and I met the love of my life, and I became more open-minded. Like all these things kind of worked in tandem to make the Metal Meltdown what it is now. So even though
Hmm.
I've been on the internet for a long time, I kind of consider the official launch of what the Metal Meltdown is now to be more like 2021, 2020, kind of in the midst of COVID. That was also a big factor as well because I was at home so much and I was like, I
Yeah.
finally have the opportunity to do what I keep saying I want to do. So I'll just go for it. Let's do live streams and let's start booking some interviews and let's start really going out there and trying new things. And I think it's worked. This is by no means the biggest channel on YouTube, but I do think, and I have plenty of stats and comments to prove this. It's probably one of the most dedicated and diverse followings. Like there are a lot of people from a lot of walks of life watching the Metal Meltdown, and they tune in all the time. Not necessarily because they agree with me or whatever. They just want to hear what I have to say, and they want to engage in a conversation and hang out and have fun.
What are some of the outliers that you found when, as you dove into those analytics, were something that just like blew you away? You're like, wait a minute, people are listening to me here. This type of person is listening to me. What? Like it just amazed you.
Yeah, one thing that stood out, I mean, YouTube stats are a little weird sometimes. For a long time and even now, it tells me that 99% of my audience is white American men. And I guess statistically that does track.
Yeah.
But then I go on Discord because we have our own Discord server, and I'm like, oh my God, no, maybe three of you are American, and there's hundreds of other people that are all these other fucking things, from a
Oh.
lot of different backgrounds, sexualities, and different faiths. So it's interesting, and I also find there's a lot of people that have gotten more into metal because of my approach to it as well, which is that's what I love as well. Like, plenty of people who are like, you know what? I don't really listen to a lot of heavy metal, but I checked out this album because I just liked the way that you described it, and I found myself really enjoying it. Um, so yeah. So YouTube tells me it's a lot of white straight men, and then Discord and every other social media service tells me it's the opposite. So I
Wow.
guess the true
That's
answer is probably somewhere in the middle there.
yeah. There's all with the internet. There's always some sort of line of truth that's blurred a little bit, and you have to use some discernment to really look at that and compare multiple things to really get the true story.
Hmm.
Totally been there before, millions of times. I one of my favorite interviews that you've done too, and you hit on this a little bit earlier, talking about being real about how, yeah, you wanted fame and you wanted to do something that got you a little bit of recognition anyway. So shout out to you for being honest about that, because I don't think a lot of people are. You wanted at least some recognition in the fact that, hi, I'm a person and I want to share with the world what I like. I don't want to feel like
Hmm.
so much of an outsider.
The reality is if you're engaging on YouTube or any kind of social media platform in any capacity, it's like, oh, well, I'm doing this for the passion. I have a passion for this. Sure, but also you
Yeah.
want people to see this. Like that's the bottom
Yeah.
line. You want people to hear your voice. Because if
Yeah.
you didn't, you wouldn't be putting this online.
Right. It's amazing how we can reflect as we get older and admit to things like that. And it's refreshing to hear. You talked about this in one of your interviews with Gabriel from Unto Others, just getting older, hitting your 30s, and being able to look back and say, man, I was a completely different person and I had completely different priorities even up to 5 years ago. And now I can accept what I've become. You're in your 30s now, so how's the decade been so far? What are the hopes?
I just turned 30, but so far it's pretty good. Like
Yeah,
literally not even a couple of weeks. My birthday was November 22nd.
yeah,
So far so good. I feel about the same. But I mean, yeah, I mean that interview with Gabriel's interesting because I wasn't really expecting it to be like that. I was expecting us to be like, yeah, typo negative,
Yes.
yeah, Ozzy Osbourne. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Much like Gabriel, as I grow older, my priorities change, the things that I want and look for change, and much like Gabriel, I want people to check out my stuff, and that's just how it is, you know.
Hmm.
Any musician, artist, anyone who makes movies, television, a chef, whatever. If you can make something for the love of making it, but also if nobody engages with it, then you're fucked. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just that simple.
Yeah. You taught, speaking of that and getting engagement, talking about clickbait, talking about all the things and tips and tricks that you can use to be quote unquote successful on the internet. I love this other question that you asked recently too, because this is one way to get attention. It's being offensive. But you asked, does metal need to be offensive? And your hot quick take on that was no, it really doesn't need to be. And I agree with that. I think other genres have been just as offensive for the same reasons as society would deem them so. So my question to you is, do you think that we're the ones as metalheads that kind of like catch the most hell for being offensive because we did it first on a public scale? Because I feel like Elvis did it first. And
Hmm.
a lot of that's a big part of the roots of metal, we'll say, is that rock and blues sound.
Yeah, I think it's easy to point a finger at a lot of metal and punk and extreme music and go, that's offensive because on a certain level it is. There is a lot of sexual imagery and a lot of explicit lyricism. I mean, especially when you get into the more extreme subgenres with like death metal, black metal, grindcore, deathcore, where people do talk about like genuinely hurting and assaulting people and like tearing them limb from limb and
Yeah.
like and that's the entry level stuff. I'm just talking like Cannibal Corpse, as you
Yeah.
get deeper and deeper it gets worse and worse and more depraved. So it's kind of hard not to argue on it's kind of hard not to agree with somebody on some level who's like that's offensive because it's like yeah, it kind of is. But at the same time it's like this is also just music. Um I'm more concerned about the message and the intent and how these people are in real life than I am with necessarily the song. Like Cannibal Corpse
Right.
can write about, strangling women, and then the lead singer, Corpse Grinder, in real life is maybe like the biggest fucking cinnamon roll on the
Yeah, I
goddamn
love
planet.
those moments. I love those
He's
moments of
he's
him where
such a
he's just
teddy
like
bear. He's
buying Legos.
harmless. He's
Yeah.
innocent. Like he is one of the few men that you would feel comfortable with in a room. Like you can leave your drink with him. He's fine.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, you get Burzum, who are writing about like fucking orcs and like it's just Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons bullshit, and the real life Varg Vikernes is like a full-on fucking neo-Nazi who has like
Yeah.
committed arson and plotted terror attacks. Something a lot of people don't know. He plotted terror attacks from prison against Norwegian government officials, and he also allegedly was the founder of an international neo-Nazi organization from prison.
What? Okay, you're
Yes.
teaching me something new. Where did this come from? Just
I
your own
mean,
research.
it's hard to find a lot of this. Most of it is just linked on Wikipedia at this point, but you can see where they get all that information. I can't remember the name of the exact organization, but officially speaking, he has no association with it because he was in prison, and it's kind of hard to officially lead something from prison, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone will have to, but it's out there. And I also find it funny that like the most hardcore defenders will be like, well, he's not actually he's an Odinist, and it's like don't be politically correct with the fucking fascists. Like who gives
No.
a shit?
Yeah.
Call it what you want. It's still a dick. I don't like him.
He still feels the way he feels, and his
Hmm.
actions have shown the way he feels.
Yeah.
Like there are numerous stories, there's numerous pieces of evidence that prove he is a neo-Nazi.
And it's
And
also because of stuff like that, it's hard to argue. Like, if this is a genre that is accepting of neo-Nazis and fascists and murderers, then it's like that's a huge problem. And that
yeah.
also going back to the is does metal need to be offensive video, that was something I also touched on because some of these people were it just seemed to me like some of these people just needed metal to reflect the values that they already had, and they were
Mm,
mad because metal has apparently become woke or too liberal or too gay or whatever the buzzword of the week is, you know?
Yeah, that's a relatively newer development, and I've experienced it firsthand too. Because I mean, I've gotten shit for wearing a Burzum shirt when, to me, truly, I listen to the music. I appreciate the music. I respect what black metal has done for the genre as a whole. But obviously, I don't condone what Varg has done, and what he's done is well known. But yet,
Hmm.
I get shit for wearing the shirt. I'm the kind of person that I feel, for the most part, I'm able to separate the art from the artist, because when you look at the actual writing behind Burzum, it is very Lord of the Rings. It's not, I want to be incredibly
Oh
racist.
yeah, Varg was such a nerd. He's such a nerd. He wrote his own. He
Right.
made his own like fantasy board game, like literally a racist Dungeons and Dragons. Like he's such a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah. And I resonate more so with that side. So it's interesting to encounter this newer development where it's like I'm getting questioned just because of what he's associated with and because the name is out there. How do you handle it when you get, because I know you get the same types of comments, I know you get the same things thrown your way. How do you handle that?
I don't know. It's numb to me. It really does nothing to me anymore. Like I'm just like I can't control what people say. I have no control over the perceptions that people make of me based on what I wear or what album I talk about or how I talk or how I present myself. So like fuck it. If I don't know. And that's actually, I will say that's part of where like the drinking games came in and like the
Yeah.
Thrash and Jackson character, because that's the
Yes.
closest I come to really
I love
kind of
it.
addressing any kind of comments like that, where I'm just like, there's no point. I gain nothing from arguing with these randos online. So instead, let's take their comments, let's use them as ammo for a drinking game. Let's turn it into something stupid that this rando character would say. Let's make fun of it, let's shine a light on it and just laugh at it. I think that comedy is way more effective than just yelling and screaming sometimes in cases like that.
Yeah, me too. I love your takes on just the genre as a whole. And I did watch the 2024 recap video, Best Albums of the Year. Completely agree with Blood Incantation and Opeth as being the supreme choices. What releases are we looking forward to this coming year, though, 2025? Spirit Fox is on my list.
Um, God, I don't know. I had not a lot has shown up in my inbox yet, so that tells me that the first couple of months might be a little more quiet than people are used to.
Yeah.
Um, Halo Effect has a brand new album coming out, which I think will be pretty interesting. I got a soft spot for that old kind of Gothenburg melodic death metal sound. Apparently Dark Angel might finally release something. That would be kind
Hmm.
of cool. We'll see. Imperial Triumphant, one of my favorite modern metal bands, will probably release something as well. They've done a few standalone singles here and there.
Hmm.
But for me at this point, it's kind of a wait and see game, you know? Like sometimes stuff just pops up out of the blue. Sometimes it gets announced a month in advance. So there's nothing I'm like really keeping an eye out on. I'm just kind of like looking. I think that I will say there is one album in 2025 I'm actually looking forward to, but it's not metal at all. It's Perverts from Ethel Cain.
Nice.
Like that's
I don't
that's
hate
my
that.
most anticipated of 2025, and it's like
I
I think
don't
it
hate
comes out
that.
like the first week.
I don't hate that. If Gaga puts something out like more concretely again next year, I would be looking forward to that. I
Hmm.
love that. I love that we can talk about other genres as well. And I don't think you're a well-rounded music fan if you're not into multiple genres too. You might have your favorites, but my policy is I'll listen to anything once, and I'll give it that. I'll give it
Yeah.
once. And if it sucks, it sucks. I'll never listen to it again. But I'll give anything at least one listen. Is that
Hmm.
how you approach your music fandom too?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, with a channel called the Metal Meltdown, I gravitate mostly towards metal, but I mean,
Of
in
course.
general, I've always had this idea too that like I'm not allowed to say that I don't like something if I haven't given it a fair shot. Like
Yeah.
I'm the guy that sat through all the Twilight movies, and I felt that that gave me permission to shit on them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
while
Okay.
like I'm allowed to. All these other straight white men, they're not. I'm allowed to
Yeah, I did this.
though.
No, I did the same thing because all my girlfriends were obviously into it. We were at that right age at that time in high school. And my problem is I like was watching Queen of the Damned, Interview with the Vampire, the Gary Oldman, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like I watched all of those before
Hmm.
Twilight. So I was like, Twilight's just lame to me, man. I'm like, this is fucking sparkly vampires. No, I
See,
can't. And Immediately I rejected it.
I find those movies funny now. Like my
Yeah.
wife and I and a couple of our friends will watch it just like we'll act like it's a comedy. Like the
Yeah.
scene in the first movie where like when Bella walks into the classroom and Edward is just like "Ooh,"
Yeah.
like he's visibly gagging,
Like
like that
yeah.
cracks me up so hard.
Take a
And
drink
and
every
later
time
on
you
in the
go.
movie is like, oh, it's because your scent was so, ooh, so seductive. I could smell your blood. I could, and I'm just like, nah, it's because she smelled like onions, dog. Just be real. She had terrible BO, and that caught you off guard. Because that's what it looks like when you watch that scene.
It does.
It's funny as fuck. And there's tons of scenes like that too, like the weird cuck tent scene from the third
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
All the weird, like weirdly Christian slash superhero imagery and
Hmm.
symbolism because for some reason a vampire just can't be a vampire in their world. It's
Yeah.
so
I have
funny.
no idea. Or the weird like werewolf imprinting on the baby and like like having some
Hmm.
whatever kind of connection with the baby. I'm like, I can't. I need to take a drink every time I'm
It's
confused.
giving Jeffrey
That's
Epstein, man. It's
it
too
really
much. Or what's his face from Lost Prophets, Ian
yeah.
Watkins. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh God, we could do that all day. Oh, those conversations are fun. The games are fun. The channel's fun. You do dive into a lot of trials and tribulations that happen within the music industry with the guests that you speak with too. I do too when I have one on, and I end up getting like pissed off on their behalf at how much they endure just to have like a sliver of the life that they want to live, and AKA doing music for a living. And I believe we should all be able to take advantage of the opportunities that we have out there. So I was curious because largely you're a fan too. As a fan, do you end up feeling the same way when an artist tells you about how much they endure going through that?
Yes. It was weird at first too when I started doing the interviews. And like I remember the very first interview I did on the Metal Meltdown. It was right before the COVID pandemic started, like literally a week before Ontario shut down.
Oh, wow.
And we were doing this it was the Ocean and Intronaut was opening. And I interviewed Intronaut in a trailer outside the venue, like a shitty rundown trailer that you would find in a
I
trailer
love it.
park. And we were talking about how, like, yeah, man, we don't know if we'll still be on tour next week because this COVID thing is creeping up and it's getting crazy. And in my head, like, never having really hung out with a lot of, like, I mean, I grew up in music, obviously, like, being in bands and listening to music, but, like, now I'm in a fucking tour bus, quote unquote, hanging out with rock stars, quote unquote. And this guy's like, "Yeah, man, I might not be able to pay my rent next week. Yeah,
Yeah.
this tour, man. We're gonna get back to work right away and do another album." And ironically, Intronaut haven't done anything since. So there's another thing I'm looking forward to in 2025.
Yeah.
And then even a couple months later, talking to Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder and just talking about trying to kill time at home. And unfortunately, he took his life a year after that, which felt really, really fucking weird because we
It's
talked about
spooky.
like dealing with depression and like dealing with like COVID-19 anxieties and isolation and stuff. So it's weird. And even but at the same time I also get to talk to like the Cannibal Corpse guys and guys from like Cattle Decapitation, Revocation, Voivod, Guar, Lorna Shore. And we get to just shoot the shit and be like, "Oh man, that one time we were piss drunk at the El Mocambo in Toronto. Oh, we ate so many fucking little falafel pucks at the weird Middle Eastern place down the street or whatever." So you do get to hear a lot of those trials and tribulations, but you also get to hear a lot of the good stuff. And I like that. I think far too often we idolize people who make art, who make music. And most of the time, these are just normal people, like normal people
Yeah.
whose platform have been elevated because their music is successful. There are exceptions. There are obviously genuine, actual rock stars who are not normal people and detached from reality, but we're talking
Yeah.
about like the mega stars in this scenario. We're talking about the Michael Jacksons and the Taylor Swifts of the world who could not live a normal life even if they tried.
Yeah. It humanizes them. I've had that moment too where like I was shooting at Northern Invasion. I was doing photography for my local radio station when I worked for one. We were doing it at Northern Invasion, which was a festival here in the Midwest. And Soundgarden played. It was 5 days before Chris Cornell died. That was unsettling to me because I was like,
Jeez.
what do I do with these photos now? How do I handle this in a respectful manner? Like, and I remember sitting on it and I sat on them for a year because that, I mean, personally as a fan, I'm hurt. Secondly, the what happened and the nature of his passing also hit me in the gut because I'm somebody that deals with anxiety and depression from time to time too. And I was sat on those photos for like a year because ethically I just wasn't sure what to do with that because it's like here's the human and I want to celebrate him as a fan too. So I ended up just doing like a tribute photo gallery like a year later. I sat on them for a year.
That's been like
And
10 years now, hasn't it?
almost. Yeah, it was
God.
2017. Almost.
Oh man,
And
I thought it was way longer ago. I mean,
I
still,
know.
it's
Yeah,
fuck me, that's crazy.
it is.
Yeah,
It
I
was a
wouldn't know what to
weird
do with those
feeling.
photos. I really wouldn't.
It was a weird feeling. And then I had another fun moment when I got to interview Symphony X, and it was on their tour bus, but before they ended up actually being in the same hotel that I booked to stay for the show because for me it was out of town. And the elevator opens up and it's Michael Romeo with laundry. And I'm like, Michael Romeo does his own laundry. That is what? He does his own laundry. And this was like right before I was supposed to meet him too. And I was like, this is insane.
You whip
I'm
out a little
like,
microphone in your pocket, you're just like,
I
since you're
know.
here,
Since
wanna
you're
just
here, what do you do to make sure that your darks don't bleed into your whites? Or like, how do you like it
I
was
mean, that would
insane.
really freak people out, though. Like, just like,
Yeah.
especially if you were like a hardcore Symphony X fan. You know,
Yes.
the idea of like a celebrity, someone you admire and love, and that you've spent time and money paying attention to, just doing normal things like doing the laundry, like that's
Mm.
insane. Even here in Toronto, sometimes, like, I mean, we see Toronto's the Hollywood of the North. We see people here all the
Mm.
fucking time. I've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger riding his bike through town,
Wow.
like literally up Yonge Street, which I walk down almost every day. I've walked through the boys set multiple fucking times because I just don't care. I'm like, I gotta
Okay.
get to work. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And whenever a band comes to town or whatever, like it's pretty normal. And I think I've had some friends that are like, oh, didn't you want to go say hi to Homelander or Arnold? It's like, no, they're on the job. No.
No,
Like this
yeah, and I'm
is
on the job too. I gotta do what I gotta do.
Yeah, I'm out, bro. I don't give a fuck. Like they don't give a fuck about me and I don't give a fuck about them. It's fine.
Exactly. So, is there anybody else on the dream interview list for you that you haven't talked to yet? I'm gonna throw an idea out there. Do another one with Paul and Isaac from Blood Incantation since the new release. I would
I'd
love to
love
hear their
to.
thoughts. I would love to hear their thoughts out there.
And
So,
that would be pretty easy for me to put together because I'm in contact with some of those guys anyway. I would, in fact, come to think of it, I guess since I just named that album of the year, that might be a good one to put together. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
right. How do they feel about
Um,
Absolute Elsewhere now? How do they feel about the reception
hmm
now? Because it did blow up. It put them on my register anyway.
hmm
That album alone. I didn't know who they were before, but this introduced me to them.
Oh,
So who else is on
undeniably,
your dream
their
list?
biggest record to date. Like it's so fucking good. I would love to get George from Deaf Heaven on as well. Deaf Heaven's a very important band for me personally. Love to get Barney Greenway from Napalm Death. You know, a lot of big names in general, because fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
Like it was like getting the Devin Townsend interview was awesome. And
Yes.
ever since then, I'm like, I want bigger. I want more big names. Let's go. Let's go. And that one was crazy because I didn't book that interview. They called me.
Really?
Yeah, I was on the TTC the day before we did the interview, like in the subway, and they were like, there was a last minute cancellation. Devin's team is reaching out. Can you speak to him tomorrow? And I was like, they called me. I thought that was fucking
Wow.
awesome. And
It,
I'm like, I'm struggling to stay on the phone because I'm in the subway tunnel. So I'm
you,
like, yeah, can we please? And I'm just hearing on their other line like, Devin,
burr, burr,
hey.
burr,
And
burr.
I'm like, no, don't lose this fucking call. Um, and that's actually even what happened with David Vincent earlier this year. Like, I had scheduled an interview with someone else from Ultimus, and then at the last minute they were like, "Hey, something happened, but David Vincent's available if you want to talk to him." Because
Sure.
and I was just like, okay, sure. Fuck, give me
Yeah.
5 minutes. Sure, whatever.
Let's do it. I've had those situations too. I mean, most of the time it is me like in the DMs or it's me in with an email. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes I get a response, sometimes I don't. I think that's
Hmm.
pretty normal. Like most people don't know about the work that goes into booking those interviews. Like it takes
Oh
time.
yeah.
You're collecting the information, you're trying to figure out the best way to approach them. You're trying to assess, are they more of a texter? Are they more in the DMs? Are they more in the emails? You never know. But that's how
Yeah.
saying yes to things, just like you described, is generally how things happen. Like that's happened to me too with Flat Black. I wanted to talk to Jason Hook, given the Five Finger Death Punch past, and I wanted to talk about life then and life now. And they were like, "Well, he's not, but lead singer Rex Orton's cool." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do
Hmm.
it. Let's go." You never know what's going to happen if you start saying yes to things. That's something I've learned doing content too.
Absolutely. I mean, even I think last year when we did the Chris Reifard interview from Autopsy, that was one I'd been trying to get for a while. And they kept telling me like he doesn't do Zoom interviews. He's not technically he doesn't care much for tech and social media.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, give my phone number. Straight up. I don't care. We'll do this over the
Wow.
phone. And I that's what we did. We literally spoke to each other on the phone and I just held up my phone, it was on speaker next to like a on a selfie stick and just held it up to a microphone and that's how I recorded it. Because
Wow.
I was like, they were just like, he won't get on Zoom, he won't get on any of these other platforms. And I'm like, okay, fine. Give him my phone. Here's my
Yeah.
phone number. Tell him to call
Try
me
it.
whenever
Try
he's
it.
ready. Whenever he's ready.
Yeah, that speaks to transferable skills. Be skilled in a number of different platforms or a number of ways to do things because you can say yes confidently when things like that pop up. I've
Hmm.
absolutely learned that too thousands of times. Well, so what is next for you for the channel? What can we look forward to coming from you?
More Uncle Melty's kitchen stuff. I don't want to get weirder with it
Yeah.
too. It's still weird to me that people want the cooking content. I assumed that people wouldn't, but some people do. More interviews, more live streams, more everything. I just want to talk about music and have fun and meet cool people and drink and have fun. That's the whole go. But I guess for the in the immediate future, top 10 worst metal albums of the year, best non-metal albums. I know that term pisses people off, but guess what? Top 10 best punk, pop, country, jazz records doesn't
Let's
have the
go.
same doesn't have that same oomph to it, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's not as short and as punchy as just saying not metal.
Right.
Um I don't know. Generally this time of year I just kind of improv a little bit. Like I'm just like whatever feels right. And in general, that's kind of how I treat the Metal Meltdown. Like I do have like an idea of what albums I want to talk about, but like sometimes I'm just like let's just wing it, you know? Like I don't care much for scripts because I find they take too long to write and I just get nitpicky.
Yeah.
So I just talk about what I want to talk about and if it resonates with people, awesome, and if it doesn't, it's like, well, it is what it is. Better luck in a couple of days when the next video goes up, you know?
Yeah. Turn the camera on and what happens, happens. Let's go.
Exactly. Like you can't, like I can't control what videos blow up and what doesn't, so I might as well just enjoy what I'm doing and stop trying to don't chase algorithms. Don't worry, it changes so frequently that there's no point in chasing it anyway. Just make the content you want to make.
Yeah, that's honestly one of the reasons I left radio too, is because they really took a look at those analytics and what works and what doesn't. And now we need to repeat it and we need to redo the same thing. Whatever it was that did work, they're like, do this over, do this over. And I'm like, doesn't this just get boring? Like, this doesn't really show our personalities. It doesn't really show what we're all about.
Hmm.
And the more they wanted that, I was like, I don't know that I vibe with this anymore. So I had to say no. And I've been doing this in my own content since. And it's been a much better decision. And it
Hell yeah.
provides the vibe that I want. Sounds like your situation too, where you're just like, I'm providing a vibe that I want. And that's the most important thing. And as long as I'm having fun, that's the measure of success, really.
Yeah.
That's it
I
right there.
mean, I'd love to live in a world where the Metal Meltdown has a bajillion subscribers and I live off this full time and I
Yeah,
stream every week and I interview fucking Metallica and Iron
of
Maiden, but
course.
for the time being it's like, you know what? I'm having fun. I'm gonna talk to the people I want to talk to that I can talk to and we're just gonna make the best of this. And I do okay with it. I'm like I said, I'm having fun, paying some bills here and there. That's what matters.
Period. I love it. I can't wait to see what's next too. Robert, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.